master everything you need to know about Zustand, a Redux alternative that has taken the tech world by storm with over 700,000 plus weekly downloads. So if you're new here, like, subscribe, comment, and turn on notification because we'll be dropping a full stack Notion clone tutorial with over 6 hours of content you won't want to miss. So let's get started. So what is Zustand? Zustand is a fast and scalable state management library for React. Unlike Redux, which require a lot of boilerplate code or boilerplate setup, Zustand focuses on simplicity and flexibility, allowing you to manage your application state with minimal setup and code. So let's look at a simple example of how it works. I have my VSCode open, so let's install Vite. So let's install Vite. If you've already opened your VS Code, just Command J to open the terminal. So I'll just click on here to open the terminal. Just click on then I'll open my terminal. So let me install this. I'm going to npm create Vite latest. Once I've done that, I'll just press enter and it should install this. So I'm going to also zoom in this my editor. So let me come to where I have view. I'm going to open this appearance and zoom in so we can see clearly. So here I want my project to open in this environment. So I'm going to just put in a period of dots and press enter. I'm going to select React TypeScript and it should install. So once you've already added a project, just press npm install to install all of the dependency of it. I'll just press enter and it should install all the dependency. So after that, we are going to add in our TailwindCSS. I'm going to use TailwindCSS for styling, post CSS and auto prefixer. Then also the compiler option, which we're going to update in the TS config. So I'm going to update this. While this is loading, let me update the TS config. I'm going to add in the base this thing in the TS config. So I'm going to also update the TS app.js. So let me start here. I'm going to put a comma here and add this. Let me set this way, I think. Okay. So let me remove this and below this, let me add it here. And let me close this. So this also. So I've installed our package completely. And let me inside the let me bring this down. So this is the TS config.json. I've added the compiler option with the base URL and the path. So inside the TS config app.json, you don't need to confuse with both of them. So inside there, I'm going to also add in the base URL and the config too. So I'm going to inside here, I'm going to just put a comma here and I'm going to paste it. So this is just only the base URL. For this is a compiler option here too. I'm going to add the base URL path and everything. So once you've done that, let's go back to installing our TailwindCSS. I'm going to draw my terminal. Let me go back here and then click on this. I will just put in npm install -d dev dependency. I'm going to put in TailwindCSS, post CSS, auto prefixer, and once you're done, we're going to press in enter to install all of these dependency. So once that is done, the next thing we are going to do is to install another package called the type node for Vite config. So inside the Vite config, I'm going to also update this part to accept the parts we've added here inside the inside the TS config, the part of which Vite will be able to recognize that. So inside the Vite config, I'm going to update this with the resolve. I'm going to bring the resolver and the path. So I'm going to come below this and I'm going to add this. So let's import the path. I'm going to import the path here. Move this path to the top, move it up, and let me save that. So inside, I'm going to clear this, and we're going to install npm dev dependency as types slash node. Let me move this to call this install dev dependencies npm id. So once that is done, we're going to initialize NextJS. So I'm going to clear this again. I'm going to paste this. So this is npx TailwindCSS in its piece. So this should give us the Tailwind config and also the post CSS config. And once that is generated, just go to your TailwindCSS config, and inside it we're going to add in the path, update the content inside it so that it's able to find most of where we add in the TailwindCSS. So I'm going to add this. So let me break this down so we can see clearly. I'm going to save that. So this is just to add the index.html and the source path directory, so you can be able to see where I will put the CSS. So once we've done that, the next thing we are going to do is we are going to bring in the derivative inside the index.css. So inside here, I'm going to find inside the source directory, I'm going to come here and put index.css. Let me close this. Then I'm going to just clear some of this code here. Let me clear some of all this code here. Clear the body. And let me clear this too. So I'm going to come down below here and I'm going to add in the derivatives that TailwindCSS provided. So this is actually going to be the add tailwind base and the add tailwind component if you have used TailwindCSS. So I'm going to paste that inside, and this should reflect. So the next thing to do now is we are done with the installation process and setup for Vite and TailwindCSS. So the next thing to do is to install Zustand. So I'm going to open my terminal again. We're going to put npm install Zustand. So once I install that, so that has installed. So the next thing to do now is just go into our app.txt, and inside there, let me remove this terminal, and we're going to clear every boilerplate code here. I'm going to remove everything here. Let me clear the whole code, and let me just put in a div to avoid the errors, and I'm going to clear this. I'm going to save that. So the next thing to do, let's run our server and to be sure that everything is working. So I'm going to, before I run the server, I'm going to say inside now subscribe. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to put npm run dev. Our server should load, and then we should have everything set up. So it is, the server is loading in port 510. So I'm going to open it here. And we should see subscribe to the channel. And yeah, so the next thing we're going to do is to set up Zustand. We're going to create a folder here. So I'm going to call it like normal way we do Redux. I'm going to create a folder called store. Inside it, we can create either index, or I'll just create a store2.ts. I'm going to save that. So if you go to Zustand, the website link is going to be in the description. You can see that after installing, the first thing to do is to create a store. So inside here, we can create our store. So I'm not going to use this example. I'm going to use a counter example, which is very familiar with everyone when learning use states. So I'm going to use that to explain what this everything you need to know about the basic setup for Zustand. So it's like a counter app. I'm going to say, so inside the app.ts, I'm going to bring in an example. I don't want to bore you guys with the writing the structure of the UI, just a simple UI, counter UI. So I'm going to clear this subscribe to channel. But subscribe to the channel, please. You guys should subscribe to the channel. So I'm going to clear this and let me bring in the code. I'm going to explain everything is and what the code does. I'm going to paste this here. So let me just comment all this error and save that. So this is just a uh, simple structure, just giving it a width, height, width, flex item center, justify center. So this is just the top of it. So let me save that so we can be looking at it there. And if you see that, you see the UI here, we have this container and then the counter and the item. So I just gave you say a div flex item center, justify center height, flex item center, justify center. You can pause the video to write that. So I'm just going to break it down. So flex items in justify center, and also I give it a card item. Then also I give it a H1 tag with X2 X transpose and margin B. Then this is the counter value here. I'm going to uncomment it fine. So let me just I can just set it to 0 for now. Then I can set the count on later. So let me save that so you should see the 0 showing here. And this is the flex item for the button. So these are the two buttons I've added. One at below it for the reset here. So inside the button we have the onClick. So this is the decrement button. So I set it to PXPY, background 500 and red 500 and text white. Then for the increments, the same thing, but just only the color change. Then for the reset, the same thing, but I set it to black. So let me even remove settings to capture it and save that. So this is all set now. If not, could not get it, I have the GitHub link in description. You can see the sample there commented in the repository. So what we can do next is to go to let's go to our store, select the store.ts, and once you select that, let's begin to write our store. So to start this also, it's very simple, just simply like use state. So I'm going to import, there's no context or wrapping or provider that is going to use to wrap the entire application. So that's the same flow we're going to do. So just press import and have our create. So import that from Zustand. Once you save that. So let's come down below it, and we are going to create the state and the action. So I'm going to put in a type because this is TypeScript. I'm going to put in a type. I'm going to put in state. So the state is taking the value, and the action is just like a function, helper function. I'm going to put counter to number. Then I'm going to create another type, and I'm going to call it actions. This is going to be equals to the three button we have, which is the decrement, the increment, and the reset. I'm going to set that to increment. So this is going to be equal to void. It's not going to return anything. So decrement. This is also going to be void. Likewise, I'm going to copy and paste this and set reset. This set is going to be void. So now it's time to create our store. So after creating the types, the states, and the action, the next thing to do is to create store. So I'm going to put in export because we're going to export our store. I'm going to put in constant, and I'm going to name the store. You can name anyone you like. I'm going to call it counts, use counter. It must be a use because it's a use hook. I'm going to put counter, and I'm going to call the create. And once I call the create, I'm going to put in this sign to add in the type of our store. So this is going to be the state and action. State and actions. So once I've done that, the next thing I'll move forward and just put in a bracket here. I'm going to put this thing. I'm going to set it into an object. So inside here, the create option here return what we call the state. Passing a state is being passed, a set is being passed, not state set. So I'm going to call this here. And I'm going to call this here. So this should be a function. I'm going to set it to set. Then inside the object, I'm going to bring in, we're going to put our initial state. So inside here, I'm going to put in the count, and you should see the autocomplete because we added these two options here. So they are combined together to inside the crate, inside the store. So I'm going to set the initial value of this to 0. I'm going to put the increment. So what would the increment do? So what I want the increment to do is to add the item. So I'm going to give it it's a function. So I'm going to put it like this, and I'm going to say use the set that you provide us. The set is to update the existing counter or any state that you've set. So I'm going to put, okay, this also has a argument of states inside. Then inside the state, and it was also a set, is also a function. So I'm going to say, okay, this is the state. Then inside there, I want to update the count. So I'm going to convert this into bracket and put a parenthesis. Then now I'm going to say count is going to be the state dot. So the state is giving us the options of count, decrement, and reset. So I'm going to say I want it to count. Then once I increment, it should add 1. So this is reminding us that we still have one more action, 2 more action. So I'm going to set the decrement, the same thing, set state. I'm going to put in state here. And inside it, I'm going to put this here. I'm going to put a parenthesis, and I'm going to say count state dot count minus 1. I'm going to save that. Then for the last one, we're going to do a reset function. A reset is going to take in the same process, but it's going to set it to the initial value. So I'm going to say set like I'm going to put this. So for the reset, I don't need to, I'm not taking the previous action, the previous state. So the normal way we do use the set state. Set state provide the previous state, and we can use it to make change effects to the to get the previous state and update the state using the previous one. So it's similar to set. So set is similar to set state in use state in React. So I'm going to set this to count, and I'm going to set this to 0. So I'm going to say that. So once we are done with our store. So this is how simple Zustand is. So once you are done, you should copy this, and let's go back to our app.js. And then we're going to do now is to call constants. We are going to paste in our use store. Make sure to import that. Let me create an object here. So let me import this from the store, and this will give us the host store. So I'm going to get the count. I'm going to get the increment, decrement, and reset. Once I get that, I will just uncomment all these buttons that I put here, function that I added here. And once I do that, I'm going to just save that and let's test it out. So I'm going to refresh this page to see that everything works fine. So I'm going to first of all increment. So I'm going to try and increment the comment. So we've not updated our counter here. So sorry guys, I need to update this to count. And let's save that and let's refresh this again. And we should click on this. We should see that the count works. Decrement, increment, and we can reset. Decrement will take it to minus, increment will bring it back. So this is so great. This is how to use, and you can use the use store in any file, any file you can use it to anywhere. It's available all over your application. It's using this use hook logic here. So, but when you refresh, everything clears out. So we're going to look at Persist later in the course. So setting up Zustand is simple and easy, but in large application or large data, this approach which we did with the counter is not the best. So Zustand recommend we should use slice to organize and then merge this slice into a single store, similar to the way Redux slice works. So we're going to look into the slice pattern. So what we're going to do now, we're going to use a different example. I'm going to come to my store, click on here, and we're going to create two slices. So I'm going to create the first slice, going to call the user slice, user.slice.ts, and the second one is going to be part.slice.ts. So these two slides is going to combine into this store. So we're going to comment this whole thing out and we're going to use it. So before we do that, let's go over to app.tx. Well, let's just stay on the store. Let's go into the user store first and let's start to create the store. So inside the store, we use create before to create the store, but when creating the slides, we don't need to use create. So create is just only for the store. So for the slides, I'm going to import a different package from the Zustand store. I'm going to call this state creator from Zustand. So once you've imported that, just come down and let's create our state. So I'm going to call this state the user state. So I'm going to open it and then I'm going to put in some information here regarding ID. So type number, we have the name, the username to string, we have the user name, the string, and I'm going to change this. This is username, not usernames. Then we have the email of the user to string. Then we have the is verify, email verify. Verified. Boolean. Then we have the address. So I'm going to make this like nested user data. I'm going to put the house address to string. Then inside the address, we're going to have the streets. The street, we're going to put in the name of the streets to string. We're going to also add in, no, not inside the street. We put a comma here and put city and set that to string. So once that is done, so outside the address, we're going to put the last one, which is called the occupation of the user. I'm going to put that to string. So once that is saved, we need to now create the state. So I'm going to create the user state. So this is the type of the user, and this is the user state, I mean to say. So we're going to create the state. I'm going to put this, I'm going to call this the user, and the type is going to be the user type that we've created above. And we're going to put it all no. So when there's no data, it's going to be set as no by default. So the next thing to create is the action. So there are some actions I want us to have when updating or creating is the user state. So I'm going to put type. I'm going to call this user action, and inside user action we're going to create two functions. I'm going to call this the set user, and also the update street. So I want us to see how we are going to update the streets because of the nested objects, because it's somehow complicated in Zotan. So that's why I pick the update street. So I'm going to put set user. This is going to set the user. I'm going to set that to void, and I'm going to say update street. I'm going to say that to street name. Void. So that is it. So once that is done, we are going to create a different type, and this type I'm going to export it. Yes, we're going to export this type. So I'm going to call this type the user slice. So this slice is going to be the combination of the user state and the user action. So I'm going to put this, let me close this out. I'm going to put this to the user state and the user action, similar to the counter we did. So we call it to user action. Let me put options. And what's that to save? So we've done the structure. So now is to create the slice. Let's create an export, and let's call this constant create user slice. This is going to be the type of state creator, and this state creator is going to take in types. I'm going to call this, going to take the user slice, and once it takes that, it's going to take in some other I think 4 parameters argument is going to take in. So we're going to, for now, we're going to put it into empty brackets. So this brackets here is where we are seeing some of the middlewares we're going to talk about later in the video. So then the last one is going to be the user slice. So once that is saved, the next thing we're going to do is to put some equals to here, and we're going to put in the set. It's going to take, I'm going to put in n objects. So we're breaking it down to separate slices. Then inside the state creator, so let's put in the initial value here. I'm going to put in the user, and inside the user we're going to call this null. I'm going to say this as user or null to avoid TypeScript issue. So we're going to put in some of it. We're going to put next in the action set user. So set user is going to take in an argument of user to type of user, and we are going to give it to set, and set is going to be object of user. So string some error here. Let me put this and see. So let me look at the store Another issue here of how. Okay, so let me just copy this here. Let me try it here. Okay, let me fix this and I'll get back. Okay, so I'll reset this back to the old way. I'm just putting equals to reset. This is correct. The bracket and the parentheses, the same thing here. So I think the problem was I didn't put in this thing here. So the next thing we're going to pass in is the update street, and the error should stop. So this is going to take the street name, and inside here we are going to set. So this is going to be a lot of work because of the nested object. So I'm going to pass in state here, and the state is going to be the user state. So of type user state, and we are going to open, passing the open an object. And inside the object, we're going to check for the user if the user exists. That's a state dot user. So we're going to put check if it exists. So let's update the. So I'm going to destructure the whole previous state, user state. Then I'm going to add in the address. Because of how nested it is, we need to open it and also use the state dot user dot address. So for the streets too, we're going to do the same thing. Dot state address dot streets. So we're going to now change the name to the new street name we want to use. And I should say also here we're going to put in the else no, and that should settle everything. So that's to fix in the types and everything is set properly. So we can see that the slice for the user is completed. So the next thing we are going to do is to let's go to our cart and let's create the slice style for it. So for the cart, we're going to also let me go back to the user and import, copy this, and let's paste this here. And inside here, we're going to create the type. And what to call this cart item equals to ID number, name string, the quantity of the item, and we have the price. So inside here, then we're going to now create the user a cart state. So inside here, we're going to call the cart items, and it's going to have the type of cart item. Then we're going to have the total. Here it's going to be a number. Then let's create the action. So the cart actions. So let me go and add S here. So we're going to have the add item. So a function to add the item. So I'm going to call this item to cart item. You can choose any name you want that to be. So I'm going to put that to cart item. Okay, so cart item. Then we have the Gatsby. Let me do remove first. Remove item. Remove item is going to have we're going to taking a param of ID, and that is going to set over. I'm going to copy and paste this and set total. And the last is with sets. So I'm going to also pass in a different one. I'm going to call this get item by ID. And that should give us it. So the next thing we're going to do is to create the initial state. So I'm going to separate the initial state here. I just want to show you a different method we can use for the initial state. I'm going to set that to start state. So inside here, I'm going to call this the class items to empty array and the total to 0. Then we're going to create in the, so before put in the, we forgot to create in the class slice, the type for the class slice. So the type for the class slice is a combination of the cat state and the cat actions. So now we are going to create in the state creator. So we're going to put in the constant create cat slice. So we're going to set that to state creator. Pass in the cat slice. Then put in the empty array 2 times and then the cat slice. So now we're going to set this and we're going to do like this. Yeah. So inside there, we're going to get in the set. So set is to set the state, and to get an item in the cart, we have another argument called the get. So this is what we're going to use to retrieve the ID of the item by the ID. So I'm going to show you. That's why I added this get an ID to show you the other option. So inside here, we're going to spread this initial state. So instead of writing it directly inside, you can do this option here. So inside the add item to that. So we're going to set that to item, which is going to be the cart item. Then we are going to for the set. So the set we are going to, so inside the set we're going to call a function here, and inside here we're going to call the state because the set provides us the previous state. And the previous state is going to be the class type of cart state. So inside here we're going to open the object, and now we're going to call the cart items, and to add item to it we're going to destructure the previous cart items and then add our new item. That is it. So inside here to get item by ID, get item by ID. So we're going to do the same thing. So instead of using the sets here, because we're not setting, we are trying to retrieve, we are going to use the get. Let me see. So the get is a function that we can see it has given us the autocomplete here. Then I'm going to select what I want to get. I want to get the cart items. Inside the cart item, I want to find item by ID. So I'm going to say that is equals to item ID equals to ID. So equals to ID. So that is it. So the next one I'm going to do is to do the remove. I'm going to put a question command here, and I'm going to put the remove item. The remove item is going to get this, and then to remove an item, we're going to use the set remove to remove a particular item that the ID match. So I'm going to call this set, and the set is going to give me the state and the type of the cart state. And once that is done, we're going to return the object I'm going to call the cart item state dot cart item dot filter so this is it. So we're going to say state the set. So we're going to say object here, and then we're going to update that. So this is it. So this is it. This is it. So let's put a comma here. So this is just to get the set. So to set it is to get the one that filter by ID. So we're going to remove the one that filter by ID. Yeah. So I'm going to just change this from equals to not. That is not equals to this. That does not match, to filter out the one that does not that the ID are not equals to this. So then we're going to take in the ones that do not have this ID. This ID here will be left out. So I'm going to create the last one, which is the reset. So the reset is going to take in object, set state. So we're not going to do anything here. We're just going to only set it to the initial. So I think we omitted the set total. So the set total, we're going to do it like this. We're going to set. So inside here, we're going to bracket an object, and we're going to see total number. So let me put a comma here and it should clear off. So this everything here is completed in a cart. So you have the exports of cards, create cart slice, and this set to set state creator. The types here, this is for adding the middleware, and this is the difference. Or if you hover over here, you should see the types that is required there. Then passing the initial state. The initial state is still the same thing of passing this item, these ones inside there. But I wanted to just read here because I'm going to pass the initial state here to reset the values. And I think that is also in the use set. We also have a particular action I wanted to add. So I'm going to add that here. I'm going to call this to reset the user to. So inside here, I'm going to bring in the reset. So inside here, come back to your user. I'm going to put in the reset user. So, and inside the reset user, we are going to reset the user to the previous user equals to null. So come down to where we have this updated state, and I'm going to come down here and we're going to set that. So this is to reset the user, set user to null. So once that is done, if we go into our store and let's create the combined store. So I'm going to comment all this out. I'm going to push that down here, and we're going to create the combined store. So to create the combined store is still similar. I'm going to just say export constant use store. Use store is going to use us to create, and this is going to take in a type. I'm going to put in a bracket here, and we're going to create another object here, and this is going to be another. And I'm going to put a here, and we're going to put in to return. So we are going to import the slice. So here I'm going to put in 3 dots. I'm going to call it the create user slice. Inside here, I'm going to pass in the. So I'm going to do that too for the create cart slice. I'm going to pass in the It is going to throw error because you've not passed the type. So I don't want to use the type. I'm going to go to my code there and let's create in a different folder. I'm going to call these types. So inside here, I'm going to call this store.type.ts. So inside the store.type.ts, I'm going to export type, store type. So the store type is going to be the combination of the user slice and the cat slice. So I think we didn't export the cat slice. Let me see. We didn't export it, so let's export it here. And let's come back here and let's import this. So that is it. So let's copy the store type. Let's copy the store type and go into the store.cs and let's put it here. Make sure to import this and the error should stop. So we're still going to show error in the app.ts because we've removed the use store can't store. So look at it, this is okay. So inside the app.ts, we're going to remove the entire boilerplate code here. So I'm going to just take this out. Let me bring it down here so I can comment it out. I'm going to comment this out. So inside here, we're going to remove this. Remove this. So inside here, we're going to bring in all of our user. You're going to bring in the user equals to, we're going to use the use store. So the use store is not from Zustand. We're going to use the use store from our store directly. And inside here, we're going to do this like this. So we can do like this if you prefer. We can get the data from the structure and get the data, or we can also do it like this. User, open the state and do it like this to get the user to avoid the rendering of items. So I'm going to create this set user. It's going to be set user. So I want to retrieve everything we've did in our store. So I'm going to call everything out. So I'm going to call the updates at updates streets. The update is going to be the same thing. Set to update streets. Then we have the reset user. So this is going to be reset. So down here we're going to call the class. So inside the class we're going to still use the use store, and it's going to retrieve the cards. The card items, I mean. Then the total, we're going to get the total. Let me set total, the total, add item, to add item. Then we'll go to remove item. Remove item. Then we have reset cards. To reset card. So this is it. So we've called all, this should be reset, not reset cards. So we've called all our store and state and the actions. So now I'm going to bring in a different boilerplate and I'm going to explain that. So inside here, we're going to after commenting that, I'm going to bring in and I'm going to paste that so we can look at it together. So I'm going to paste it inside here and I'm going to comment out some things here. I'm going to comment out the loading. I'm going to comment this one out. I'm going to comment this one out. So I'm going to explain everything. You don't need to worry. So let me bring this. Let me close this down. So inside this add item to items to add, I'm going to bring in an item here which we're going to use to get the we're going to use to items. So we'll have different IDs. Way to call this inside here. So this item to add. So this is like an item that I've listed for us to use when we want to add item. Then let me just change this from cart to cart items. And let's save that. So let me explain everything here. Let me save that, and we should see on this page, you see the UI. So this is the UI. So let me explain that. So the first line of the code is to set a flex first column, item center, justify center, and height screen. Then the second one is P and rounded shadow large and text center for each shadow here. Then here we have the H1, the X2, X font both, then B to the title. Then the first section we have H2, text XL, font semi-bold, margin B, and user info. So this is the user info. Then below it, we have like a fast text left MB4. So this is just to retrieve the data and convert it from a string to JSON string before from the store after getting it from the store. So this is the user. So the user here is what I pass here. This user is what I pass here. And this is null, and this is so. So if you hover it, you should see the value and string and the spacing. Two spacing. And have the button. So this button here is so we have some data here where we set the value. So for the set user, which is stated here, remember this, the user state. We have the ID, the name, the username, the email verified through, the address value, the street name, the city, and the occupation. So the street here is First Street. Then we have the button here to be, let me break this down. BX for PY2, BG blue, background blue 500, X white, rounded, over blue. So this is for this here, for the set user. The second one is the update street. So remember the update street takes in the street name, the new street name. So this is second street has been set, and there you see the same style but just different color. BXPY BG green 500, X white rounded, over B green 600, and ML2 for margin space. And the last one here is, so leave all this one, we'll come back to it. So we have the reset user, which is the red one here. Similar to it, but this is just changed to red using red. PX for PY, BG red 500, text white 200, background red 600, and ML2. So we have the reset user. So I added a break here for spacing and the same styling. XL for H2, font size, and MTC for spacing at above, M2 and MB2 for spacing down, margin spacing down, shopping cart. So this is a shopping cart. Then I set the total. So the total is set to fix 2. So let's LG fonts, semi-bold, and then total. So here we have the same pre to pre out to display the JSON data of the cart items. Then if you come down here, the item to add is this. So we are looping through this data, which we can see here, add button. So to create the add button for both all of them. So inside here we have in the add item. So we'll map the button, map the item, and add in the key. So we now use the add item. So remember we have the add item. This is the add item, and the add item has ID name. If you go to your card slice, remember we have the ID name, quantity, and price. So ID name, quantity, and price. So that is what we pass in here, and this is still same style with the other button. So let me break this. So we have px4, py2, background b500, xy 200, m out 2 for spacing. Then we have the hover and margin. So on disable, it should be opacity of 30. So for the disable, what I did here was to check. Remember the cart item, if you go to the cart slice, the cart by default is empty. So if the cart item has an item and we find the item is equals to the cart ID is equals to this item ID. So we're going to disable the button else for, so we can't add item twice, only once. So now we name the button add and the item name. So this is it here. So let me just show my everything. So for the cart items, that item, let's change this to. So we are saying that this button is to reset the cart, like the same way we did for the reset user is the same way here. So let me look at why this is throwing error. Reset cards. It's not assigned to mine. So we're going to look at it. Let's do it like this instead. So it says expecting one argument. So we can look at it. Let me just explain it. So this is it. So to check if the cart item is greater than 0, then the clear cart button will appear. So the clear cart button is not showing only when we add item to flat. So for the last one we have is to load through the cart. To load through the cart, and this is going to show each of the cart item. This is the item here. Each of the cart item to first item center, span item L out to, then the item name, the quantity, and then the price, and a button to remove them. And you can see the remove item is here. The remove item is here. So this is to remove the item from the can of passing the item ID of each of the item, and this is similar to the same button style we have. So let's look at why the reset cart is doing. So I'm going to go into here and let's see inside the store and slides. And I'm going to slides and let's look at. We need to remove this. So remove the ID and let's go back here and we should solve the issue. So I can come back here and just set this to nice and everything should work. So if you did not get it, you can come to my GitHub here. GitHub link will be in the description, and just go into the app.tx and you should see the code there. So let's test out our. So the first thing we're going to test is to test the set user from the user slice. So the first action we have, since by default it is null, you can see null here. This is null and this is empty. So we need to set a user. To set a user, we are going to use this data here. I'm going to use only one data for it because since it's not a list. So I'm going to click on this button. Just move over to your browser and let's reload this again. And let's click on the set user. Once I click on the set user, we can see the object here. Object will be shown here. This is great. And if I click on the reset user, it should be empty. So once I click on the set user, now we need to move to update street. So in the update street, remember we are passing, if you go to the user slice, we are passing the street name, and the street name is checking and replacing the street. So let's test this out. Let's go back to the street name and let's test it out. So I'm going to click on the street name now, and you should see that the street name is showing first street here. But if you come to the code, the update should replace the street name to second street. So I'm going to click on this and let me click on it, and we should see it does update the street to second street. So once I click on reset, everything should be clear. So let's go over to the cart item. So the cart now is what we're going to do now is to add an item to cart. So we are looping through this item to to pass in each item. So these are the 3 items we've added in the code here. If you look at here, this is it here. So I'm going to click to add IPO, and once I add IPO, the button should be disabled by this function, by this code here. So I'm going to click on add Apple, and Apple is what is disabled. So now it's showing 1.99. If I click on add banana, it's showing 0.99. So you can see, and if I click on, and you can see the clear cut structure. So I'm going to come down to where we have click. I'm going to break this in so that we should have this space here. So okay. So we have the add orange, and if you scroll down, if you see, if I can remove the item, and this thing is work because of this. So each of these items are being looped. So that means these items are in the cart items, and you should see the item here, the quantity and the price. And if I remove Apple button is enabled, and Apple is removed from the cart item. If I remove banana is removed, and if I remove this, and if I add this again and click on clear cut, everything should be cleared. So this is how to use this slice and how to combine multiple slides in Zustand. So we're going to look at how to use a better approach in updating complex nested data like in the user. So there's a package you can use which you can combine with Zustand to use to update to set this more readable than using this complex. So if you have so much large nested data, it should be so complicated and so long enough that to very difficult to put in the code. So we're going to look at that now. Zustand has series of middlewares, and for updating, like I said earlier on, updating and trying to make this more easy and readable. So Zustand has a middleware called Immer. So Immer is a different package which we need to add in our code so that we can be able to update this user street address properly and readable. So to do that, we're going to first of all go into our go into our app dot inside the store.tx. So inside the store.tx, I'm going to come down here and we are going to add in a middleware here. So inside here, we're going to bring in the email. So before we do that, let's install the email library. So it's a very small package which will help for readability. So I'm going to install, I'm going to call this npm install Immer. So IMMER. So I'm going to install that. So once that is installed, very light library. So once let me close this and we're going to import it here. So inside here to use it, we are going to come to where we have this here. Come down here and we're going to pass this. So let's go back and below it after the first bracket we're going to import Immer. So let's import Immer from Zustand library or Zustand middleware. So we're going to open this and let's close this. So that is it. So we've added Immer live inside it. So if you go to our user slice, then what we are going to do here now is we are going to update this from this. So let's take away this. Let's take away this object entirely. And inside I'm going to say if. So let me take away this bracket and let's put a parenthesis here. So I'm going to say if state user dot user. So let's state dot so user dot address street dot name is going to be equals to the street name. So this is it. So this is what Immer does. It helps to make it readable. So this is better than the old method which we have to destructure, countless destructuring. So, but we're having a problem here. This is because we have put in the email, and if you go to your store CX, we've added the email library here, so middleware here. And if you go to your user slice, we need to update this particular empty. So this is the reason why we added this empty. So this is to add it. So to do that, we are going to put in an empty bracket, put in your code. Then we're going to call this Sultan. So inside here, we're going to put a space, a comma, and then we're going to call this never. And now the error should stop. So this is how to use the email lightweight library to make work easier. So to make it readable. So this is better than the other way. So let's try it out and see if our code is still working functionally well. So I'm going to come and set the user, and this is showing the first street. And if I update the user, we should see the second street is updated. So this is perfect, and this is how to use the Immer library middleware for making your code readable, like countless is just trying to avoid error resolution. So the next middleware to look at, we are going to look at the Zustand auto generating selector. So uh, Shadcn recommend us to use selector when using property or action, like state or actions from the store. So the selector has been created by Zustand. So this is like generating to generate. So if you have used Redux before, you know that we normally use a selector in Redux. So Zustand now has given us a way to use it. So for us to use it, we can come to the Zustand library. Let's go to the introduction here, and let's load this up. And if you come to here, click on this and select it, as you can see auto generating selector. So once you say we recommend using selector when using either the property or action from the store. You can access value from the store like this. So this is a create selector that is being given to us by Zustand, but I think this is giving error. So if you're using TypeScript, this is not going to work for you. You have to come down to where you see TypeScript. I think. Let me see here. So I think, okay. We can copy this, but this is actually giving error. So I'm going to paste in. Let's try it out. This is giving me error. So I'm going to copy a different one. And so before we do that, let's go to our file and let's create this here. Come down here and let's call this selectors.tx. So you can copy it from my GitHub URL. So I've added it inside the selector. So I'm going to bring it in. So this one is not giving me error, and I've been able to factor it similar to what we have here, but to avoid some TypeScript error. Similar to what we have here, but so if I paste that in, you should see we have the export default create selector. We have so I added this because of the any, and I change this to constant here. Why here is it's giving issue. So I'm going to save that, and once you save that, you can go back to our store, and let's go back to our store, click back to our store, and let's come down here and let's export constant.use store is equals to create selector. So let's create selector, and now we're going to change this from use store to use store base. And I'm going to copy this and let's pass it inside the create selector. So I'm going to remove this exports. This should work. So inside the app.tx, we are going to change a lot of these to use a different way. So let me just comment all this out. I'm going to bring it in. So let me just give you an example first, and I'm going to bring it. So inside here, we're going to use the use store, see the use store, but instead of opening it, we're going to put in a dot to use. Inside the dot, we're going to say user, and that is going to give us this. So I'm going to bring that in because I don't really want to type this. So I'm going to get everything. I'm going to paste it here. So I'm going to bring it here and let's paste it here. So let me just remove this one. And when we save, we should see that we're using the use store to get the use and the user. We're using it to get everything. So instead of using the states, the other option which we use is state dots, this we're using it. So it's often recommend we should use this. And if we try our code back, let me refresh. Everything should work properly. Update restrict as change to seconds. And if you reset, if you change add apple, clear, add, remove. So everything worked properly. So that is it for the auto generating selector that Zustand has provided us with. So in Zustand, if you select multiple parts of the states, React may re-render the components unnecessarily if one of those selected parts changes, even though you only care about certain part of the state. So we use useShallow. useShallow avoid this by comparing the selected parts of the state at a shallow level. This means it's comparing only the first level of the object instead of a deep checking nested object. So let's look at how to use that. So inside our app.tx, I'm going to come down. Let's scroll down here. I have some code that I've written here before. So I'll write this one down. Then I'll just uncomment this. So to use the useShallow, I'm going to come down here and let's get this information here. I'm going to come down. Yeah, let's go to the top and let's use constant and let's destructure the store. To get the use store, and we're going to put that. Then inside the store, we're going to get the state. And once we get the state, put our bracket then. So we can get the name from the store. Dot name. User dot name. Then we can get the name from here. So I'm going to put a question mark here to avoid it. Then username. Username is going to be user. Then the street name. Going to be set or user address the street, and we can also get both the class item if you prefer. So instead of here, we change this to class items. So this is the option. So I'm going to select the username and also the streets. So how to use the useShallow here is when getting a particular let's say we get the action and we're making updates or changes to the to certain slides, let's say cart items, it may force React to render other parts of the store. So why Zustand gave us to use shallow is to avoid deep checking and just the shallow checking. So to use the shallow, we just come down below this and use shallow and make sure to import that from Zustand React. And let's so this is how to use it. So let me check. Let me get the street name. Okay. Name. And if we check our code, we should see the value being displayed on the UI. So for now, it's nothing is displaying, but when I set user, we should see the name, username, and street. And if I update the street changes. So when we update the street and the street changes, it just render, instead of rendering the whole thing, it just check the one that make changes and render it. So this is how to use this is how to use the useShallow. So the next one we have is, so we're going to look at other middlewares in Zustand. So Zustand first middleware is the DevTools. So the DevTools, this is another middleware which is used for checking and being able to debug most of the action that we do in Zustand store. So it's similar to the way Redux work. So we're going to do that, we're going to go back to our store and let's import it. Let's go to our store. So we're going to add under middleware. So the middleware is going to be above here. I'm going to call this, we're going to call it DevTools. I'm going to close this and let's wrap this. And once that is done, just import from Zustand middleware and save that. So now, so what we're going to do now is come to your code and let's open the DevTool. So I'm going to open the DevTool. So let me close this. Let me drag this down. So once you've clicked on this, if you don't have videos, you need to install videos extension in Chrome. So yeah, it's installed or it's not found. So I'm just going to refresh this and we should see the store has been found. So if I bring this up, we should see that it's record the action and this is the raw data. We can see the tree and we can see the raw data. So if you've used Redux before, this is how it works. So I'm going to make an action. I'm going to click on set user and you should see an action has been made. And once I come here, you should see the data. If I click on raw data, but if I click on tree, you should see the data was made. Previously it was null. Now it is showing ID name and the information. If I click on raw, we should see the full data. So if I update the street, another action has been made, then we can come down here and see. If I click on it, then we should see that a changes was made in the store, the name from first street to second street, and if I reset the user, you see the last one that this data was changed to null. Similar for cards, if I make an action in cards, you should see that the store has this information. If I add that, if I click on it, you should see this action. And let me click on it and you should see that. So if I clear everything, then you can see all the data was removed in the cards from the next action. So this is how to use the DevTool in when we add item to carts that is on the cart play. If I click on the add apple or add banana, you should notice here that the total does not change, which we have here, and it's supposed to change once you add item to cart. The price here is 1.99 and 0.99 should calculate to give us 0.00. So this does not change because we've not set up what we call the middleware we need to talk about now, which is a subscribe selector. So we need to set a listener to track when anytime we make an item to cart to calculate the total amount. So this is useful for us observing and reacting to changes in selected parts of your state without re-rendering the component unnecessarily. So in this example, I'm going to clear everything in cart and let's go to the store. So come over to your code and click on the store, and we're going to import this selector. This middleware called the subscribe with selector, and import that from Zustand, and let's wrap everything here and let's save that. So once you've wrapped it with the subscribe the selector. So now we need to set up a listener for subscribe to the cart slice or cart store for any changes or any item on cart. So to do that, there are two ways to do that. I'm going to show you the two ways. So the first way I'm going to show is to use the use effect in app.txt. So if you come down here, I'm going to close this and let's go use a use effect. And inside the use effect, I'm going to let's put an MC please. So inside here, we're going to call the constant subscribe equals to use store. Now we're going to use the subscribe here. And inside the subscribe, we return the state. We get the state argument, the state. So after getting the state, we open the. Then what we do here, we'll call state dot the cart items. Then we'll give it a comma. Then we'll give it a space here, and we'll now call another function that takes in the cart items. So this is going to open a parenthesis here. So you should see how it's been done here. I'm going to constant total equals to cart dot reduce. So I'm going to say that is equals to item. I'm going to calculate this plus each of the item price. Then we're going to multiply that with the item dot quantity. So once we multiply that, the next thing we're going to get this to give us a comma and we're going to set to 0. So now we've set everything. So now what we are going to do here, we can use the use store dot set state and we're going to set the total. Now once we've done that, we can inside the area we can set a return a function that's unsubscribe. So let me set this to unsubscribe. Yes, so we should update that. Then in the cart slice, we notice that we call a function called set total. Now set total should not be id, should be the total. So let's update that. So this is total. So we have set total. We can use that. So we're going to use that too. Or let's try this example and see if it works. So when any changes occur, so the cart says, so I'm subscribing to the state.cart item. So when it changes, I get the cart items and I do a calculation using the videos in JavaScript to calculate the add and multiply each price times the quantity. So let's see how it is. I'm going to try it out on my phone browser. I'm going to click Apple item and you should see that this is 5 plus 5.97. This is 1.99 times 3 to give us this. It's rounding off. Remember, we rounded the total up here. If you scroll down to where we have the total, we set it to fix 2. So if I add a banana, say 7.5, and if I remove, it's set to 1.9 because this is 2. And if I add the orange, add the apple, and everything should work fine. So I'll clear my cart and everything should change. So this is an approach you can use. Or let's use this instead of using this. Let's use the set store and set the total. And let's get the store from here. So I'm going to say, let me bring it inside here. Constant set total equals to, and once I save that, is asking for set total. So I'm going to save that and let's try it and see how it works. So I'm going to, on my browser here, I'm going to click on add Apple and it changes 0.5, 9.5, and let's try and play and see. So I think it's taking time to take effect when I click on the play item. So I'm going to, instead of this, let me return unsubscribe. Let's try it out again. I'm going to add item, let me clear. So it's still taking, so let me inspect this and look at it and see why it's taking countless times to, it's a reduce of empty array with no initial value. So this is the error that it's showing here. So let me close that and let me clear that. So it's complaining for reduce here is given the issue. But let's look at the other option we can use. So I'm going to comment this out. It's similar, the same thing. I'm just going to let me uncomment it and let me copy from here and let me comment this out. And comment the total out, so total out, and let's remove the use effects. So I'm going to remove the use effect and inside the cart slice, no, not inside cart slice, I'm going to go into the store and inside the store, I'm going to come down here. So where we have the store, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the use store base subscribe, and this should do the same thing. So I'm going to paste the code I got here and I'm going to remove the unsubscribe. I'm going to change this to store base. I'm going to remove this. I'm going to use this to say store base dot set state, open an object and set this. So it's supposed to look like this. It's supposed to be like this. Total dot total. But if I set it to a single total here, since the value here is to the variable here is total, the constant is total. So we're going to try this out and see. We'll save that and let's refresh it. So I'm going to add Apple, add banner. Let's see if it will clear quick. So it's to clear it once. Add and add. And once I clear everything, flex. So this is how to use a subscribe with selector middleware in Zustand. So like I said earlier on, once we add item to cart, like the set user, and if we scroll down, we see once I try to refresh the entire browser, we notice that the changes here, all the data are removed. So let me go to the app.cs and let me change this, remove this from to auto. So let's go back to the store. So when we make changes to the store, we add items. So I added that auto to make this scalable. And I update, I come down here, add item to carts, add two items to cart. Once I refresh, we notice that all the data are being removed from the store. So this is because we need to persist most of the data we added to the store. So to use that, we need to go to our store again and to add a different middleware. So in the store, I will come down here and we're going to come above the subscribe and let's add the persist. So we're going to say persist and let's import that from the middleware. And let's set this. Let me come down here and add this here. So persist expect two arguments. So we need to take in the whole data here, the whole the middleware here and the store different slice, then also passing a different. So I'm going to put in comma here and I'm going to bring in here and put parentheses. So inside there we're going to give it a name of the store, a name of the store. I'm going to call this local store. Local, let me change it to Zustand store. And once I save that, it works. So by default, Persist store the data to local storage. So let's try it out. If you come down here to our browser and let's refresh this, nothing show. But if I set user, add Apple, and once I try to refresh this, you see it does not go away. So if I try to inspect this, let's try to inspect, open your developer tool and go to where we have the application. Let me click on application. And now you should see if I click on the local storage and I select our browser. And let me close this. And if I open down the data, we should see Zustand store. And once I open this, we should see our states and we should see our data. So we have currently one item in that, and we have the user data here. And the user data here, if you look at the address is the first address. If I change that to update that, and we should look at the changes again. Click on item and the user and select the address. You should see 2nd Street. So this is storing in the local storage. Likewise, if I remove or I make changes, the item I remove, if I clear the reset the user, we should see everything. User is now, class is now, total is 0. So it combined the whole slice together into one store. So this is how to use the Persist local store. So the other option that Zustand also give us with the Persist is we can change the storage. So I can say get storage. So just put get storage. So in the get storage, I'm going to open a function. I'm going to set the type of storage I want. By default, it is set to local storage. And if I save that, this is how it works. If I try to clear everything here in the local storage and I add, you should see the item here. So, but the second one we have is what we call the session storage. So I can set the session storage here. And once I save that, I clear the whole data. Come down here, clear this data. Let me clear everything here. And when I add item to cart, even when I save this, you should see it has appeared here in the session storage. So this is the session storage. So if I add Apple, you should see that the item have been added to the carts in the session storage. And if I add set user, it's working. If I update, everything works very fine. So this is how easy it is to use Zustand in React. So we can use it. The same flow is the same way with Next.js, Astro, and other React framework. So this is how to use the Zustand. So the last one we're going to look at is Zustand Async action. So if you go back to our store, let's use from the user slice. So we can use Zustand to call endpoints or call async action. So how does this work? So below here, we're going to come to our action. We're going to put a new action. I'm going to also add in some new states here. So I'm going to close this user, and inside the use state, I'm going to add in two states. I'm going to call it it's loading to a Boolean field. So I'm going to set that to Boolean. I'm going to set error to a string or null. Or no. So once that is done, I'll come down here and let's add it here. It's loading. I'll say by default is false, and error is going to be null by default. I'll put comma here to say that. So that is done. So for the action, let's go up to where we have the action. We're going to add in a fetch user. So fetch user is going to take in empty array and void. So now for the fetch user, we are going to call inside here. We're going to call the fetch user. So let's call the fetch user. And now this action will have the async, asynchronous. So I'm going to call this async. I'm going to put in an order and let's call this. So let me put in the comma here, and that is it. So we've added this function here. So inside the function, at first we need to make set when we call the fetch user. By default, first instance, the loading should be set to true. So how do we set it to true? We have to call the set. Inside the set, we call is loading to true and error to null. So that is so inside there we'll call a try and catch block. So I'm going to call this MC and really set this. So let me just put this inside here. We'll call it error. So inside the try block, we're going to call an endpoint here. I'm going to say constant response is equals to await fetch. So I'm going to use HTTP JSON placeholder dot type code. So this is a dummy data. I want to fetch only a single user. It's user/1. So inside it, we are done with it. So what we are going to do now is to go below it and let's extract the data from the response. So inside the data, I'm going to get in await response .json. So I'm going to update it to response. So now, once we've gotten the data, we need to update our user data. So I'm going to get the user, and inside the user, I want to set this to partial. So we're not going to update all of the values. So to avoid TypeScript error, I want to call this partial user, and it's going to be equals to an object. So let's see that it does not throw any error here. Then we're going to update the ID to data.id. We're going to we're going to set the name to data.name. We're going to set the email to data.email. And we're going to set the address to an object of house address. So since the data does not have house address, I'm going to just set this to fetch address. But it has a street, so I'm going to set the street to name or data dot address data.address dot street. So inside it, you're going to put the city. It's going to be data address dot city, and that is it. So now we are going to, after we are done with this, we are going to call the set state again. So I'm going to console this data so we can see it. Alright, so I'm going to set this data. So since we call this partial, we don't want you to replace all the item in the state. So all the user data, we are going to open this and I'm going to call the user. Now we are going to destructure state dot user, and then we're going to destructure the fetch user. So that is it. So now for the error, we're going to do set. So I'm going to call this error failed to fetch user. So I'm going to just remove the TypeScript issue. But we're not going to use this. I'm just going to set it to unused. To remove the unused, I'm going to set is loading was. So now we are done with this. We can see it now. We are done with fetch user. We set the loading to true error to now. We'll call the try catch to inside it. Then we're going to call the fetch to fetch item data from the JSON placeholder. We can get the response and we partially add because we don't have all of the data here. Some data are missing in the type like occupation and each verify. So I'm going to just leave that to default way. I set the user ID, email name, house address. I just give it a default. I just give it a address so we can know that the address changes, street, and also the city. They will console it and update the user state because we don't want to override everything. Then we set the error to and the when I return set the it's loading to false. So that is actually so we're going to go to our code and let's import the fetch user. Let's get the fetch user from the app.tx. So I'm going to come here and here we're going to call this fetch user. So let me constant fetch user from the user fetch user. So now if you scroll down so where we commented this out, so this is where I added a button here. So I'm going to uncomment it out and I'm going to also retrieve the loading. It's loaded, I'm going to retrieve it from here. So let me just what is loading here. I'm going to let me just remove this cat item. We're not even making use of it. I'm going to just say it's loading. And you can retrieve the error too. I don't need the error here. So here what I did here, I just create a same button. Add X for PY to BG purple 500, XY to 100 over BG purple 600 and disable to it's loading. Then I set the default opacity of 30. So when it's loading, show is loading, then add async add user. You can put async add user here. So let's try it out and see how you're going to work. So I'm going to save this on in my browser. I'm going to inspect this so we can see the endpoint is being called. So let me clear the console. Let's try with the network tab and see how it's called the function. So I've already added the dummy here to the state, the dummy data to state, and let's see. So this is supposed to update the dummy here in the state. So look at we have John Doe and street name. So these are the name, current name, username and street name. And let's call async. And once I click on it, you should see loading and the endpoint is being fetched. So once it's successfully fetched, data will be updated. So it should fetch. So the data has changed from the username has changed. So let's go back and look at it. This didn't work well. Let's go to our user slice. Okay, I didn't change the username to data.username. And it's loading. I don't know why I didn't change to so we're going to also we set it for only the error. We forgot to update it here. So I'm going to update it here to false. So I'm going to save that and let me go back to our app.tx. So make sure to update the set user here and also the user and also update the excluding the false. So this was already when it was filled, but if it's successful, we need to also set it to false after it returned the data. So I'm going to come down here and let's reload this. So let me clear everything in cards and then Let me clear every network, what's network application. Let me click on application and let's clear everything here. And let me load this. So we reset everything. So I'm going to inspect again so we can see the data console. And let me set the user again. This is the default user with John Doe, and First Street. And I'm going to use the NC now. Click on it, it's loading. And once it loads completely, we should see the data here. We're having address, the company, the ID of one, the name. If you look at the name here, the username and this should be the street name, I think. Yeah, street name. So this is street name. If you look at here, we have the street name and you can look at we have the fetch address. So this is amazing. So we can also set update street and it will update the streets. You can click on set user, it's set back to default one. And once I click on it again, it load and it's updated. So this is how to use the async action in Zustand. So I'm going to close this, and so this is it. Once I refresh, the Persist still works. So all right. Hope you've learned everything about Zustand. So try Zustand in your next project and let me know what you think in the comment section. So make sure to please like, share, and subscribe. Hit the subscribe button because we'll be dropping a full stack Notion clone with over 6 hours plus content you won't want to miss. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and share. Merci.